All right, fellas, decided to do a boot review. It's the middle of summer, nothing else to do, and people will be asking for a lot of questions around different types of boots as hunting season hits. So I went a little off the deep end here in the last couple of years and bought a bunch of boots. A lot of them are the same brands and models that guys ask about, so decided to do a review. I'm an upland bird hunter, and I see a lot of the same questions around these boots, as well as a lot of crossover with big game hunters out west on sheep hunts and elk hunts. So, you know, it should apply. I've worn these, primarily live in Virginia, primarily go out to the Appalachian Mountains and just hunt grouse out there. There's a lot of just uneven terrain out there, boulder fields, slashing, a lot of down trees. So they require a lot of stability. Same kind of thing you'd see out west. I've worn these same boots out in Idaho, Montana. I wore these in West Virginia, where there's a lot of boulder fields, wet boulder fields on hillsides, mountainsides. Same up in New Hampshire, a lot of boulder fields. So these reviews that I have for these boots will be applicable East Coast, West Coast. I've worn them in Nebraska, so in the prairies as well. Not as much on the prairies, but I did wear them for a week last year. So hopefully this will apply to everybody that wants to hear more about the boots. So just want to give a little background. These boots were assembled sort of haphazardly as I learned more. I had a lot of different boots before this, mostly hikers. I had, Dana pronghorns and some Wolverines, some Carolinas, and finally just kind of graduated to these type of boots through trial and error and figuring out what worked for me. So there are some inconsistencies. It's not an apples to apples across the board. I would have loved if I bought them all the same time and did that, but that'd be very expensive. So I did the best I could. There are definitely similarities here, though, and these are the mountaineering, hunting boots that a lot of folks are asking about, so there's a lot of similarities. I try to be objective as much as possible. I'm not going to answer what's my favorite, just because, again, my foot's shaped differently than everybody else's. My requirements are different than everybody else's. I will give very objective comparisons where they matter. So I think I can answer which one's wider, which one has more toe box room, which one's stiffer. I think I can answer those kind of questions for guys. Cost is not a factor in here. I will tell you, some of these boots, if you're shopping around for them, get pretty expensive. I collected these. I'm not rich. I collected these and hitting closeouts. I collected these getting ones that were new with tags on eBay, and I've gotten some crazy, ridiculous, cheap deals on eBay with that, or once worn. Cost is not a factor in this, and there is quite a range, especially if you get some on sale, and if you just pay full retail. It can be up to 50% difference, so shop around. I will say that it took me a while to get ready for this, because my requirement is I wore each of these boots at least 25 miles. Obviously with 6 pairs, really 7. The Thors are just kind of a comparison for weight, but with 6 pairs of boots, it takes a while to get some miles on them. So I wore each of these at least 25 miles, and really most of them upwards of 50 by my best guess. And that's hunting, hiking, and I train bird dogs 2 days a week. That helps get a lot of volume. Average probably 3 miles each outing. I know that's not a ton compared to an elk hunter that goes out and hunts, for weeks on end, but just doing the best I can to get some miles on them and, give you a real review, not just an unboxing and, hey, these look great. I want to get some real information on them. Oh, I will say that all these boots are treated the same. So I'm pretty good about boot maintenance. I usually do open-offs every 10 to 15 miles, give or take, 2 or 3 outings, or one long outing, especially if they get wet, or especially if they're in real dusty conditions. So they have been treated from the get-go. Treat them to help them break in a bit, and it just obviously protects them with waterproofing and just keeping the leather supple. So they've all been treated the same way. So first off is the outlier, and again, these are Crispi Thors, and they're really more of a hiking / hunting boot, lightweight Gore-Tex boot. So I just wanted to give that a comparison. Those are, this is not really part of the review. Those are 1 pound 9.5 ounces, just to give you a baseline for what's heavy and what's light. So these are not an ultra lightweight hiking boot, but they're obviously lighter than all these full leather boots. Also, I'm trying to give some reference to flex, because everybody has their rating is different. There's some websites that try to, I think, compare them together. So I'm giving, it does get a bit subjective, but I think I have a pretty good handle on that. So Crispi gives these a 4. Other ratings I've seen on these is a 4. These, even though they're a little hiker, are stiff. I mean, these are like a ski boot kind of feel to them. They are definitely stiff, so that's what I'm calling a full 4. So that is, you know, that's your true mountaineering type boot. Like, they're definitely the stiffest boots of all these, even though they look a lot lighter weight. So with that, I'll get into it. And these are not in any order. So I did this. This is really how they pulled out of the closet. So I just wanted to start. So these are Hoffman Explorer. This is their non-insulated model. They call this an 8-inch boot. As you can see, you kind of look at them in comparison wise, they're about the same height as everything else, close to it. I measured these at 10.5 inches, and the way I measure them is from the sole to the top of the upper. So if you go inside the boot, it's 8-inch. So that jives what they're saying with it being an 8-inch. I measure it from the sole up because I believe that you know, that matters as far as the distance to water entering the boot, because you're walking on the sole, obviously. It's just, it helps to, you start looking at these things and comparing them, and you're like, an 8-inch boot, that it sure as heck looks like a 10-inch boot, and what's the difference? So I'm just letting you know that's a, you know, that's a 10.5-inch boot. Weight, 2 pounds 3 ounces. It's actually a fairly light boot. So so as far as flex, I'm calling this a 3-. So it was amongst the lighter flexing ones of all the ones I have here. So I can say it was, if not the easiest, one of the easiest to break in. You can wear it right away. So just do that. So as far as being waterproof, it has a Sympatex liner. So obviously Gore-Tex is kind of the name everybody knows. There's some different liners out there. I can't tell you which better. I think there's so many variables that it's impossible to tell. I haven't worn these for 3 years. But I can tell you that right now, in any condition, these things are 100% waterproof. You can dunk them in a stream and walk up a stream for 30 yards and you'll be fine. I find that the worst thing you can do as far as testing a boot for being waterproof is just walking around in morning dew. You know, a heavy downpour or heavy dew where they're constantly wet, not necessarily drenched walking through puddles. I think it's walking in constant wetness is the hardest thing on a boot, because they don't have a chance to breathe and get that water pushed away from the insole. So they've been fine with that. I've had them in a ton of mornings, especially in the spring when you get a ton of dew in the mornings, running dogs for 2-3 hours, and they've been fine. So as far as durability, I'll let you know in a year or so when I've worn them some more. These are relatively new boots. As far as fit, they're definitely, they run smaller than at other sizes. So these are 11.5. So just background on me, I wear a 10.5 to 11. I can fit into some 10.5s in smaller, I'm sorry, larger cut boots. I think I'm a very true 11. Going in and getting fitted, I'm a true 11. I have a narrow heel and a kind of a medium foot foot volume, I guess you call it. So I have pretty standard feet with narrow heels is basically the get of it. So these took a full 11.5 to fit. So if you buy them, just know that you're gonna have to go up at least a size and a half. These are made in Italy. I would say across the board, the Italian boots are definitely cut a little smaller. So just a heads up there. Toe box fits good, nice and wide, you know, not too pinched, so it looks good there. The length was fine at 11.5. It was proportional to the toe box size. Stability to me is two things. I'm going to call that the stiffness of the upper, you know, to stabilize your ankle, and then how you ride, how your foot rides in the insole. Is it cradled by the insole, or does it feel like it's sitting up on top? And it's just really, you know, some boots definitely feel like they're going to let your ankle roll easier than others. Some, your foot feels like it's riding low in the boot and is nice and stable. And then again, obviously the stiffness of the upper. So I would say these are excellent for the stability on the insole. Your foot feels like it's riding right down on the sole, and it doesn't feel like you're going to roll over. I'd say that the upper stiffness is a medium, you know, so they're not the stiffest things. It's part of them being, you know, one of the more easy to break in comfortable boots. So I'd say they're like a medium there. What I like about these is they have a one-piece vamp. So not to get too nerdy, vamp is just basically this lower piece. It's one piece, so you don't have a lot of seams. You know, all of them have seams where they connect to the upper, but there's no seams in the middle of the vamp. And the other thing is there's no seams on the tongue, on the lower part of the tongue. So it's a one-piece vamp and tongue, which means you have less seams, less seams to let in water. So these look great from that perspective. You know, you do have a seam here on the tongue that's fairly high, and you have a nice leather tongue. The other thing that's really cool about these, they have a leather, I don't know what to call this, leather cushion on the upper. So that's, you know, it's definitely a good high quality boot. The hardware is all like these cast pivoting eyelets, which is real high quality. Especially at the price point. These boots are a bit cheaper. I'll let you go and look at the prices. I got these on closeout for a ridiculously cheap price last year. But especially at the price point, these have real nice quality. And again, with the leather padding up here, you know, they're excellent. The only thing I have is a knit, and it's kind of a biggie. I never thought it would be, but they don't have a stud for the tongue. So you can't center the tongue. And just the way these things are cut, they do want to twist. When you put them on your leg, they want to kind of twist this way. It's a big oversight. I mean, even cheap boots have that. I wish they had it to just center the tongue and make it easier to tie them up, but it just takes a little extra step and a little fighting with when you're putting them on. That's one thing I would change on them. So I think anything else, they're a Vibram Sole. They have really good grip. I can't speak to wear, other than they don't appear to be wearing any faster than they should be, but good high quality sole. So all good on these. Okay, that's the Hoffman Explorer. All right, next we got the Schnee, or Schnee? Called Schnee. Schnee Beartooth Classic. So just a heads up, this is a classic. They also do a Beartooth 2, and that's a little newer. Everything I've read is that they're very, very similar. I think there's just some little bit of updates made with hardware, but the general fit, finish, and design is roughly the same. The reason I don't have the newer one is I got these off eBay. New in box for 150 bucks shipped, and these boots run $425, $450, somewhere in there. So I got what I could get. And just a heads up, 3 pairs of these boots, it came that same way. New in box, off eBay, for well under half of retail. I guess, guys, you know, you can't really get these boots locally in a lot of places, especially on the East Coast. And guys buy them, they don't fit, and I guess they just, for whatever reason, don't send them back. You know, get a refund. They just put them on eBay and don't put a really high reserve on them, and they're cheap to get. It just takes a little time to get them, and obviously when they pop up, you know, guys kind of, you know, everybody sees them, and there's a lot of bids, and you kind of have to get lucky. But anyway, I was able to get these cheap. So, all right, so these are a size 11 US. I will say that they are extremely narrow fitting. These are an Italian boot, so it tends to be the, you know, kind of the trend. But these actually, they weren't just narrow. I had to put a stretcher on them to be able to wear them. I wore them about 3 times, got them wet, rubbed them down with Obenaufs, trying to get them to break in, and I just could not get them to break in. So I had to throw a stretcher on them, and that did help them quite a bit. So they're fine now, but they do run very narrow. They're a 10-inch boot, and 2 pounds 5.5 ounces, so a touch heavier than the Hoffmans. I'd put these at a flex 3, real standard. I'm gonna call 3 as like my baseline. These came right in a 3. They break in fairly easy, but they do have some, you know, some definitely backbone to the sole. So as far as waterproofness, these have something called event waterproofness. There's waterproof in it. There's the copy right there. They've been fantastic. I just wore these last Thursday. A couple days ago, it was super humid, and there was tons of condensation and dew on the grass. It's middle of summer right now. The grass is extremely heavy, so my pants were soaked. I was soaked, and these were no problem. And I think we ran dogs for 2.5 hours and had no issues with things creeping up. So again, that's kind of worst case scenario, is just being constantly drenched, and no problems there. So the Vamp here is actually 2-piece. So these are the only boots that actually have a 2-piece Vamp. You see it cuts off right there and has a seam. It's pretty low. I don't have a problem with any kind of waterproof issue right now, but that is potential down the line. So just a heads up there. And the same for the tongue. The tongue has a seam fairly low, so just something to look out for. The other thing with these is that the tongue does not go all the way to the top of the upper, or the shank. So, you know, there's potential, even when you're walking through, if you're walking through really deep puddles, you're gonna see these being a little less than 10 inches. We call that, you know, 8.5 or 9 inches before water will be able to get in past that tongue. So just as a heads up there. These do have a Vibram Sole. I feel like they have pretty good grip. I haven't ever had any issues with them. One thing I will say is these, the midsole, which is you have your insole, which is the piece you can the piece you can pull out. Then you have your midsole, and these is extremely hard. If you take it out, it's a piece of white plastic, and it gives them some stability and stiffness, but it's really hard. All the other ones are kind of about the same, but these I had to put gel insoles in to make them comfortable. I don't like to talk about comfort much, because again, that's personal. So maybe some guys will like that, but I can tell you that these are a bit of an outlier as far as that midsole being real hard. And the other thing that's interesting about them is the leather is more of a waxed or oiled. It has a bit of a sheen to it, as you can see. When you roll them around, you can see it's got a sheen where everything else is just matte finish. And it appears like the leather's a little stiffer. So talking about stability, I would say these boots are outstanding for stability, because they have you sit low in them, you're stable, it feels like your foot's cradled, and then they're fairly stiff. On the upper is fairly stiff, so you feel like they have a lot of stability. These are some of the first to come out of the closet when I know I'm going to be cutting a cutover. It's going to have a lot of down logs. So just kind of a difference with these and other sets of boots. So overall, that's the Schnee's. Good boot so far, and just moving on. All right, next is my Lowa Tibet GTX. So just as a heads up, these are a bit of an outlier from the other boots, because these are lower. They're close, but not quite the same height as the others. They are 9 inches to this top here, but they taper down quite a bit, so you're barely 8 inches to the back. So they do sell a Lowa Tibet high, which would be more in line with all these other boots. Just a heads up there. These come in at 2 pounds 4.5 ounces. I would say, without not having true evidence, if these were the high, the 1.5 inches taller, they'd come in at say 2 pounds 6.5, 2 pounds 7 ounces. You can just tell these are a little on the heavier end of the boots. They're built a little more robust. So just a heads up there. As for flex, these are a 3+. These did take a little bit of break-in. They definitely break in nicely, but took a little bit to get them broken in. And size, these are 11, US 11, and I would say these are very, very true. Just assuming my foot is a true medium, and just other shoes I've worn. These came in, the length is right on 11, the size of the toe box, the general volume of them, these are very true to fit. Now these are a German boot. Everything else you've seen has been Italian. It might have something to do with that. They say that's kind of how it goes, and it's from what I've seen, that is true. The German boots run a bit bigger than the Italian boots. Okay, these are a Gore-Tex boot. As far as waterproofness, now these boots are 3 years old, and they're still 100% waterproof. I wear these quite a bit. I've not ever had an issue where these have been wet. I've had these in 4-hour downpours, walking through puddles and through thick grass, and not had a problem. So 100% waterproof at this point. Toe box is on the wider side, so plenty of volume there. I do have to crank these up a little bit to be tight on the front of my foot, but once broken in, that's fine. Stability, I'd say that these are okay. It's a little bit of an apples and oranges, because these are a lower boot. You definitely feel the difference of missing the 1.5 inches or 2 inches of height. And you do ride a little bit higher on the insole on these, just a bit. So just as a comparison with other ones, I've been out in Idaho and side-hilled these and could kind of feel it, and I would crank them up as tight as possible. So just a heads up there. As far as hardware, I'd say these have the nicest hardware of anything that I'm showing here. You can see this is nice cast bottoms, but they have actually ball bearing rollers. I don't know how necessary that is. It's shoelaces, but it is ball bearing. They glide real nice, and you can crank them up tight. But the big differentiator for me is they have this. It's called an eye lock. So when you tighten these up and you flip these closed, it keeps all this tight. Even when you could unlace the upper, and that will stay perfectly tight. So you can crank them up nice and tight, and then do your upper, so you don't lose your circulation in your upper part of your foot. So I would say these are exceptionally nice hardware. They have a little bit different of a stud on the tongue. It's called the X-Lock. It works the same as everything else. No big deal there. These have a Vibram sole, and it grips fairly well. I will say that these don't seem as grippy as some of the other boots. It might be a little harder compound, or just whatever the pattern is, but they just don't seem like they grip as well as some of the others. Not a big difference. You're not slipping and sliding all over the place, but just a heads up. And as far as the Vamp, it is a one-piece Vamp. comes in about mid-range. There's definitely some that are higher, some are lower, but it does kick down a little bit for this this speed lace. And this is a two-piece tongue. The little seam, it's kind of hard to see past there, but there's a little seam down low, but it's fairly small. So again, these have not had any problem with being waterproof, but they are, they do have a two-piece tongue. So that's it overall for the Lowa Tibet. Next up, and again, when I talk about, these are not exactly the same vein as the other boots. These are Kenetrek guides. So these are Kenetrek mountain guides. And these are 400, I should have said this too. These are non-insulated. So all the boots have been non-insulated. These are a 400 gram insulated boot. The reason I bought these is these are extremely expensive. These are $490 boots retail. I got these for $200 new with tags in the box. So even though they're a bit different class of boot, I had to grab them for that cheap. So the Mountain Extreme is the boot that would really compare more to everything else. These are, as it said, these are kind of these are a guide boot. They kind of give you extensive rationale on them on the Kenetrek site, or if you see them on YouTube. These are made for guides. They have a heavier sole. They're just a heavier built boot overall, and that's exactly how they feel. I mean, it's not just marketing BS. It's exactly how they feel. They're 11 inches, so they're an inch higher than other boots. The sole is thicker. These come in at 2 pounds 13 ounces, so they are up to half a pound heavier than other boots. And you can start to feel it. I don't feel 2 ounces here and there. I can't say that any of the other boots really feel that different. You do feel it with these, and they're definitely stiffer. They're a 3+, bordering on 4. These are definitely a very stiff boot. So what was I going to say about it? So stability, I'd say these are a bit less stable. You do feel like you're riding higher on the insole. And so part of that, they just do have a higher sole. It's thicker, so you do feel like you're a little bit higher riding, and they don't have as much side stability because the padding comes down further. So I'd say these are, if you're gonna side hill, these would not be the first boot I'd grab out of the closet for side hilling. So Kenetrek has something called Windtrex. I don't know if there's a label in here anywhere. Yeah, so these are Windtrex. These are perfectly waterproof. I've had these in the same conditions as everybody else. They're nice and waterproof in stream crossings and heavy condensation, that kind of thing. I would say these are an 11. They definitely run a bit short. They have tons of volume. I actually had to run a thicker, higher insole in these, but the shoe itself is a bit short compared to what I normally would think on an 11, and compared to the volume of the shoe overall. The hardware is fantastic. It's just cast pivoting hardware, so real high-end stuff, real nice. I will say that these come all the way down to the toe. So the other shoes, you kind of go up near the crease of the toe. This comes all the way down to the lower end of the toe. A lot of guys, I think, like that because it lets you adjust the toe width, the toe box width. So just a heads up there. Really nice one-piece vamp, and one-piece tongue that goes up, fairly low seams. So this is, should stay waterproof for a long time. And a really nice leather on the upper, inside and out. And like I said, these are made in Italy. Seem to be really high quality. I hate to speak to quality without being able to tell you the reliability to back it up. But as far as workmanship, these are probably the nicest ones. They're fantastic. They're a really nice boot. I would wear these primarily as a cold weather boot because they're insulated and they're just heavier built. And with the extra volume, I can get a heavier pair of socks in them. So that's the Kenetrek Mountain Guide. I'd love to get a pair of Mountain Extremes and compare them to everything else. I'll keep looking at eBay and see if I can get some. Okay, next up is the Meindl Perfect Hunter, which was a brand that was run through Cabela's. So I think if you're hunting around for these, you probably know that you used to be able to get, I'm going to call them Meindls or Meindls, through Cabela's. And there was arguments whether or not they were the same quality as the true European Meindls or Meindls. So I can't speak to that because I don't have them side by side, but just take it as you will. So these are a 10-inch boot. These do have some 200 gram Finsolate, and they come in at 2 pounds 7.25 ounces. I'd put these as a Flex 3+. They're a bit stiff to start, not horrible, but do take a bit of break in there. These are a size 11, and I would say they're definitely true. These fit pretty well as far as length, and the toe box is nice and standard for me. I will say these are a high volume boot. I have to crank the laces up quite a bit to get my foot tightened here and not have heel slip. So that's just, again, I'm not saying that's good, bad, or indifferent. I'm just saying that these are a higher volume boot. So if you have kind of blocky feet or a high instep, these might, this would be a preference for you. So as far as being waterproof, they're fantastic. This is a Gore-Tex boot. Again, I've not had any problem with in any situation with these being waterproof. I said the fit's good. Stability, I would say that these do definitely feel like you ride very high in the insole. I've had experiences where I took these out hunting, and when I had the side hill, I just felt like I wasn't nestled down in the boot. So if you're going to go with an insole on this, I'd make sure it's nice and thin, that keeps it down. As far as the Vamp, it is all one piece, but it does have a seam down low where they have this speed eyelet. So that could be an issue with it being kind of low side, but it is generally, it's a one-piece Vamp. It is a two-piece tongue, so I haven't had any problems with waterproofness, but there's potential for that down the road. I will say one other observation that kind of bore out with it being different. Most of these are, there's a lot of Vibram soles in this group. They have something called a multi-grip sole. I would say these are. All right, final boot is the Crispi Guide GTX non-insulated. So this is a size 11. I would say that this is very close to fitting true to size. They are a bit short, so I do have to lace up pretty tight, or I'll get to, my toes will kind of jam in the end, especially my right foot, which is bigger. But anyway, so they're very close to true to fit. They're 2 pounds 5 ounces, so amongst the lighter, and they're a 10-inch boot top to bottom. Flex, I'd put these at a 3-. And these were probably the easiest break-in boots that I had as far as just getting in and going. So just a heads up there. As far as waterproofness, this is a Gore-Tex boot. I will say that if you are in heavy grass with a lot of condensation on it for an hour or more, these will start to not leak horribly, but you will start feeling on my right foot, they'll start to come in a little bit. So just a heads up there. The toe box on these, I would say, is fairly wide amongst the others. It's a Italian boot. The rest of the volume, I think, is on the smaller side, if that sounds feasible. But the toe box is a little bit on the wider side, so I have to crank on the laces pretty good to get these to fit right. Stability is fantastic on these. You sit nice and low in the boot, down on the midsole, and then the upper is nice and stable. All these boots have a bunch of marketing acronyms around all the technology built into them. We know, I don't know your thoughts on what marketing really means. I know these have the ABSS system, the ankle bone support system, I think it's called, something along those lines. I don't know if it has to do with that, but they are extremely stable, I will say that. As far as hardware, for a boot of this price range, I think it's a little marginal. These are, kind of a stamped with no kind of, you're not cast, they don't pivot, and they're not roller. It's not a big deal to me because it's not like I'm shredding the laces on them, and these are my second oldest pair of boots. But it is definitely a little bit lower end hardware than some of the others. The Vamp is one piece, and it goes up fairly high. So as far as, is that, if you see that as an advantage, these definitely have one of the higher Vamps. And it is a one-piece tongue. Cut out of the same piece. So as far as that goes, it's a Vibram Sole. And I do have a note here that I feel like these are extremely grippy. Seems like it's a soft compound, or it's just the pattern. I'm not completely sure, but I do know that I have, when I'm going, across the boulder fields, you really feel like which ones slip and which ones don't, especially if they're wet. And I feel like these are grippy. So okay, that's it. Hopefully that wasn't too long-winded, trying to get through all the features of them and just kind of give a little bit of notes on each, again, without being too subjective. So if you have any questions, comments, just put them down below and I'll try to answer them. But that's the lineup. Again, I wish I would have had a little bit more of the same exact type of boot to be apples to apples, like use the Kenetrek Mountain Extreme. Meindl now sells, on Meindl USA, I think it's called the Vacuum Hunter. Is probably more in line with the rest of these because it has, it has a rand. Where I should have mentioned that this doesn't have a rand. you know, it is a little bit more in line. But if I get any of those boots in the future, I'm kind of at the saturation point where, you know, my buddies are calling me Imelda Marcos and making fun of me for having 6 pairs of boots. My wife's making fun of me about it, so I don't know if I'm going to get another pair of boots. But if I see a, you know, if I see a brand new pair of Kenetrek Mountain Extremes for $100, I'm sure going to grab them. And if I do, I'll do a review on them and compare them to the rest of them. So hopefully this helps you out. I see tons of comments around, you know, Crispi versus Kenetrek and Schnee's versus Hoffman's and so on and so forth. So hopefully this will give you a little bit more one-stop shopping by the same guy that has them all and has worn them. And like I said, I didn't just take them out of the box and look at them and say these look cool and these don't. And I've actually worn these. I will say, and I don't mean to be too preachy, for upland hunting, you know, a lot of the traditional upland boots are moccasin toe, very light. I had boots like that, hikers, and walking on boulder fields, you know, my feet would kill me, my ankles would be worn out. I've moved to these. A lot of guys don't like these boots because they are relatively heavy. They're a good half pound, you know, or more heavier than those type of hiker boots. They're stiff. When you first put these things on, you know, especially with the ones that I said were like a 3+ to a 4, they feel like ski boots. They feel extremely uncomfortable. If you don't have them fit right, you will get more blisters from these because they don't flex as well. But if you wear these on hard hunting days, and especially on boulder fields and you're going on cutovers, I feel like they save my ankles, they save my feet. I feel better at the end of the day, and I don't really notice the weight that much. You know, you get accustomed to it. I don't feel like as soon as I put these on, my legs are dead at the end of the day. So that's just my take on it. So if you have any questions, just let me know, and hope you enjoyed. Thanks.